you like to know. It's called chemistry.
This is parkour.
Parkour!
Even in the early and simple times of manhood, the pharmacy profession was still in existence. The development of pharmacy parallels that of man. As the lifestyle of man became more advanced, so did that of pharmacy. Ancient man learned and practiced pharmacy based on instinct. They used their materials such as cool water, mud, dirt, or a leaf to develop soothing applications. Once they narrowed down the best material to use, they applied and shared this newfound knowledge. Although these methods were quite raw, many of the medicines that we see today stem back to those used by early man.
Babylonia has records from the earliest known practices of apothecary. Apothecary is the practice of preparing and selling drugs and medication. During this time, practitioners were priests, pharmacists, and physicians all in one. They used clay tablets to record medical information such as symptoms, the prescription and directions for compounding, as well as a call to the gods.
Chinese pharmacy stems from Emperor Shen Nung, as he is said to have tested the medicinal value of hundreds of herbs. He tested them on himself and made a record of over 300 herbs. He examined herbs, bark, and roots that are still recognized in today's world of pharmacy.
Though Egyptian medicine dates from about 2900 BC, the best known and most important pharmaceutical record is the Papyrus Ebers, which were around 1500 BC. These were a collection of 800 prescriptions mentioning 700 drugs. Pharmacy in ancient Egypt was conducted by two or more echelons, which were gatherers and preparers of drugs, and chiefs of fabrication, or head pharmacists. The Papyrus Ebers might have been dictated to a scribe by a head pharmacist, as he directed compounding activities in the drug room.
Man learned early of the prestigious advantage of trademarks as a means of identification of source and of gaining customers' confidence. One of the first therapeutic agents to bear such a mark was terra sigillata, which means sealed earth, a clay tablet originating on the Mediterranean island of Lemnos before 500 BC. One day each year, clay was dug from a pit on a Lemnian hillside in the presence of governmental and religious dignitaries. Washed, refined, rolled to a massive proper thickness, the clay was formed into pastilles and impressed with an official seal by priestesses, then sun-dried. The tablets were then widely distributed commercially.
Pedanius Dioscorides, during 1st century AD, contributed mightily to such a transition in pharmacy. He recorded what he observed and communicated excellent rules for collection of drugs, their storage, and use. His texts were considered basic science as late as the 16th century.
One of the men of ancient times whose names are known and revered among both the professions of pharmacy and medicine, Galen, undoubtedly is the foremost. Galen practiced and taught both pharmacy and medicine in Rome. His principles of preparing and compounding medicines ruled in the Western world for 1,500 years, and his name still is associated with that class of pharmaceuticals, compounded by mechanical means, galenicals. He was the originator of the formula for a cold cream, essentially similar to that known today. Many procedures Galen originated have their counterparts in today's modern compounding laboratories.
The Arabs separated the arts of apothecary and physician, establishing late in the 8th century the very first privately owned drugstores. They preserved much of the Greco-Roman wisdom, added to it, developing with the aid of their natural resource syrups, confections, conserves, distilled waters, and alcoholic liquids. When the Muslims swept across Africa, Spain, and southern France, they carried with them a new pattern of pharmacy, which Western Europe soon assimilated.
Many Europeans of quality and wealth, particularly those who were nonconformist in religion, were attracted to the possibilities of the American colonies. From Britain came John Winthrop, first governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony and founder of Boston. Governor Winthrop, unable to induce professionals to the colony, sought advice from English apothecaries and physicians and added to his small store of imported drugs those derived from plants native to New England. In his home, about 1640, he made available as best he could the art and mystery of the apothecary for his citizens.
Christopher Marshall, an Irish immigrant, established his apothecary shop in Philadelphia in 1729. During 96 years, this pioneer pharmaceutical enterprise became a leading retail store, nucleus of large-scale chemical manufacturing, a practical training school for pharmacists, an important supply depot during the Revolution, and finally, it was managed by granddaughter Elizabeth, America's first woman pharmacist. Christopher earned the title of the Fighting Quaker during the Revolution. His sons, Charles and Christopher Jr., shown as youths with their father about 1754, earned individual fame and carried on his fine traditions.
Colonial America's first hospital, which was in Pennsylvania, was established in Philadelphia in 1751. The first hospital pharmacy began operations there in 1752, temporarily set up in the Kinsey House, which served until the first hospital building was completed. The ingenuity of Benjamin Franklin was helpful in both. First hospital pharmacist was Jonathan Roberts, but it was his successor, John Morgan, whose practice as a hospital pharmacist and whose impact upon pharmacy and medicine influenced changes that were to become of importance to the development of professional pharmacy in North America. First as a pharmacist, later as a physician, he advocated prescription writing and championed the independent practice of two professions.
During his few short years, Carl Wilhelm Scheele gave to the world discoveries that have brought its people incalculable advantages. Yet he never forgot that he was, first of all, a pharmacist. Encouraged by enlightened preceptors, all of his discoveries were made in the Swedish pharmacies in which he worked, as an apprentice, as a clerk, and finally as an owner. He began in a corner of a stockroom of Unicorn Apothecary in Gothenburg. With rare genius, he made thousands of experiments, discovered oxygen, chlorine, prussic acid, tartaric acid, tungsten, glycerin, nitroglycerin, and countless other organic compounds that enter into today's daily life, industry, health, and comfort.
Faced with two major threats, deterioration of the practice of pharmacy and a discriminatory classification by the University of Pennsylvania medical faculty, the pharmacists of Philadelphia held a tempestuous protest meeting in Carpenter's Hall, February 23, 1821. At a second meeting, March 13th, the pharmacists voted formation of an association which became the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy, a school of pharmacy, and a self-policying board. 68 pharmacists signed the constitution of the first pharmaceutical association in the United States, American Pharmacy's first educational institution bearing the same name, opened November 9th.
Rarely has a title been so deserved. William Proctor Jr. graduated from the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy in 1837, operated a retail pharmacy, served the college as professor of pharmacy for 20 years, was a leader in founding the American Pharmaceutical Association, served that organization as its first secretary, later as its president, served 30 years on the USP Revision Committee, was for 22 years editor of the American Journal of Pharmacy. In 1869, though, he retired. Proctor continued to edit the journal in a small publication office located beside the college's 10th Street building. From retirement, he returned to PCP's chair of pharmacy in 1872. He died in 1874.
Despite the professional skill and integrity of 19th century pharmacists, seldom did two preparations of vegetable drugs have the same strength, even though prepared by identical processes. Plant drugs vary widely in an active alkaloidal and glucosidyl content. The first answer to this problem came when Parke Davis and Company introduced standardized liquor ergotae purificatus in 1879. Dr. Albert Brown-Lyons, as the firm's chief chemist, further developed methods of alkaloidal assay. Parke and Davis recognized the value of his work and in 1883 announced a list of 22 standardized normal liquids. Parke Davis also pioneered in developing pharmacologic and physiologic standards for pharmaceuticals.
One of the successful researchers in the development of new chemical compounds specifically created to fight disease-causing organisms in the body was the French pharmacist Ernest François Auguste Fourneau, who for 30 years headed chemical laboratories in the world-renowned Institut Pasteur in Paris. His early work with bismuth and arsenic compounds advanced the treatment of syphilis. He broke the German secret of a specific for sleeping sickness, paved the way for the life-saving sulfonamide compounds, and from his laboratories came the first group of chemicals having recognized antihistamic properties. His work led other investigators to broad fields of chemotherapeutic research.
Research in some form has gone hand in hand with the development of pharmacy through the ages. However, it was the chemical synthesis of antipyrin in 1883 that gave impetus and inspiration for intensive search for therapeutically useful compounds. Begun by the Germans, who dominated the field until World War I, the lead in pharmaceutical research passed thereafter to the United States. Research in pharmacy came into its own in the late 1930s and early 1940s, has grown steadily since, supported by pharmaceutical manufacturers, universities, and the government. Today, it uses techniques and trained personnel from every branch of science in the unending search for new life-saving and life-giving drug products.
Antibiotics are not new. Their actions were probably first observed in 1877. However, the second quarter of the 20th century marked the beginning of the antibiotic era, a new and dramatic departure in the production of disease-fighting drugs. Fleming's discovery of penicillin in 1929 went undeveloped, and Florey and Chain studied it in 1940. Under pressure of World War II, the pharmaceutical manufacturers rapidly adapted mass production methods to penicillin, having reduced costs to 1/1000th of the original price. Antibiotic discoveries came rapidly in the 40s. Intensive research continues to find antibiotics that will conquer more unsolved cases.
Pharmacy, with its heritage of 50 centuries of service to mankind, has come to be recognized as one of the great professions. Like medicine, it has come through many revolutions, has learned many things, and has had to discard many of its older ways. Pharmacists are among the community's finest educated people. When today's retail pharmacist fills a prescription written by a physician, he provides a professional service incorporating the benefits of the work of pharmacists in all branches of the profession: education, research, development, standards, production, and distribution. Pharmacy's professional stature will continue to grow in the future as this great heritage and tradition of service is passed on from preceptor to apprentice, from teacher to student, from father to son.